So, good morning and welcome to Discover Drawing Part 4. Today we're going to have a look at doing a drawing of some shoes, and if I flip this telephone round I can show you. That was the drawing that I did just in a few seconds at the end of the last tutorial. So that was my response to could you draw me a quick shoe. And as you can see here, we've got laces, we've got the sole, we've got a heel, we've got like an area there where you can obviously put your foot inside. Now you may well have done something similar. Other things that we sometimes get are the kind of heeled shoes. So, you know, they tend to sort of go up and then bit stuck there in a tall heel, so you might have had something, you know, like that, some kind of a heeled boot. Sometimes we get a bird's eye view of like a ballet pump, a sort of kind of this sort of thing, or it's got a little bow on the front, or so you might have done that. But most of us will draw a kind of a boot from the side with a bit of a lace or something like that. So a very symbolic type of drawing. And the first thing that we've got to think about is how do we go from that to something that looks a little bit more like a real pair of shoes. And I've got my set of shoes ready here. Okay, so I've got a pair of shoes, and if you remember, I did say to you, the more complex the shoe is, the more parts and areas it's got, different textures, then actually in some ways it's easier. I know you maybe don't believe me at this stage, and even I'm looking at that thinking, gosh, I've got to try and draw that. That's going to be really complicated. But the difference is I know that actually there are methods to get over that feeling of being unable to do something. So the first thing we're going to do is look at how do we understand a drawing task. And if I let you have a look at this poster here, this is actually a Mercedes-Benz advertising, okay, and it says the best, let's just see what it says there, the best or nothing is what it says there. So they've used this idea of two sides of your brain. So you've got the left hemisphere of your brain over here, and you've got the right hemisphere of our brain over here. Now, one thing to remember is the brain works as obviously as a whole muscle, and the bit that joins it down the middle here, this bit down here is called the corpus callosum, so this part down here. And messages do go from one side to the other, and whenever we do a task, usually there's one part of the brain that is taking charge of doing that task. And it doesn't mean that there aren't other bits being involved as well, but we can isolate that certain activities light up certain parts of our brain more than others. And there's been a lot of research done on the brain. One thing to remember is that research is still ongoing. They're discovering new things about the brain all the time. But so the sides talk to each other, and it's not quite as clear as saying left brain does this and right brain does that, but we can talk about the fact that we have a left brain mode. So generally, if we're in left brain mode for certain things and we're in right brain mode on this side for other things. So if you have a look here, what Mercedes have written, left brain, I am the left brain, I'm a scientist, a mathematician, I love the familiar, that's really important in terms of drawing. I categorise, I am accurate, linear, so likes to do things in order, analytical, strategic, really practical, always in control, a master of words and language, realistic, I can calculate equations and play with numbers, I am order, I am logic, I know exactly who I am. So if, you know, when we drew that first shoe, basically the left brain, the ones that are important to us here is always in control. So our left brain is the one that tends to jump to attention whenever we're given a task, and it likes to do tasks in order. It likes tick lists. You know, we do something, we tick it off. It's very logical. Now, if you drew a shoe from underneath or the side, it might not look quite like a shoe. So basically it's trying to be practical and efficient, and it's saying, right, let's do the familiar thing. What is our familiar picture for a shoe? And here we are with some of the ideas of what familiar shoes look like. It's quick, it's efficient, our left brain knows exactly what a shoe looks like. There it is, job done, tick, and on to the next thing. So our left brain takes charge of our drawing tasks, and it has a very efficient way and logical way of tackling that task. Let's move over to our right brain, however. I am the right brain. I am creativity, a free spirit. I am passion, yearning, sensuality. I am the sound of roaring laughter. I am taste, the feeling of sand beneath bare feet. I am movement, vivid colours. I am the urge to paint on an empty canvas. I am boundless imagination, art, poetry. I sense, I feel. I am everything I wanted to be. So a very, very different way of operating on the right side of the brain there. And if I say to you that the left brain here produces drawings like this, but if you can learn to work more in your right brain, then you should be able to, just let me find it, you should be able to produce drawings more like this. But it takes a bit more time, a bit more energy. And the main thing is, we quite often block ourselves from our drawing. So as far as our left brain is concerned, once we've drawn that little symbolic shoe, the job is done, we've finished. And if you try to carry on drawing for longer, or you try drawing your shoes at different angles, things like that, then what happens is the left brain gets quite angsty about that, and you start to feel frustration. And it's a really, really normal thing, especially when you're starting to learn how to draw, that you get fed up very quickly and you get frustrated very quickly. And the easiest thing in the world to do is just to announce that you can't draw, give up, and stop. It's a similar thing that happens if you're learning to play a musical instrument. Think, if you do play one, think back to when you first started to learn and you had to learn all the notes and it was very laborious and it was a bit of a chore doing your practice. But if you keep at it and you keep going, then eventually you get to the point where you lift up your musical instrument and you play and it becomes a pleasurable thing to do. Think about drawing in the same way. Okay, you've got to learn the skills, then you've got to practice the skills, and the more you practice them, then the more natural they become. I can work in my left brain and my right brain and flip from one side to the other and know which side of my brain I'm predominantly working in, but that's come with experience because I've practiced a lot. But to start with, it's good to know that the frustrations that you feel when you're drawing are completely normal, and quite often you can actually work out what that frustration is. It's that dialogue between the left and the right brain trying to work out who's in charge. And actually our left brain is more dominant, and so it will tend to be in charge more, and it will try to get you to draw a symbolic shoe like this, because that's what a shoe looks like. However, we would like to work more in the right brain and we'd like to be more creative about it. So that's what I'm going to do today, is to show you how to do this. One of the best tips I can give you is, as soon as we label something, our left brain quite often has a symbol or a symbolic picture for it. If you think about a flower, for example, if I just ask you, just quickly draw a flower. Okay, I'm just going to pop this back on the stand while you draw me a quick flower. Don't overthink it, just do it really quickly, a bit like we did with the shoe, and let's see what you've come up with. Okay, so if I were going to do that exercise, a flower to me would be a circle, then it would be petals coming out. I don't even really need to think about this, a stalk. And sometimes if you're a little bit older and you've added to this, this is what I would call a left brain symbol. Sometimes we get leaves. If you're a little bit older and you've added more detail to your symbol, you might have some veins in the leaves. You might have some texture added in the middle of your flower. Okay, so basically that's a kind of a left brain quick flower, and you might have done something similar to that, but it's not our best drawing, and that's the bit that you have to remember. That is not my best drawing. Okay, my shoe wouldn't win me any art prizes. Okay, but these are not my best drawings. These are my left brain drawings. They are my reaction to a drawing task. The left brain is your more dominant side of your brain, and it says, right, I've been asked to draw a shoe, this is what a shoe looks like. I don't need to look at one. I can get a rough idea, and it reproduces these basic symbols. So how do we go on then to create something just a little bit more special than that first left brain drawing? I just want to show you another one here. So I've just got one up on my laptop here. Hopefully you can see it. I'll try and bring it right up to the screen. So this was a primary 5 child, so it'll be about 9. That's their left brain shoe. Okay, really, really simple. And that was the first shoe that they drew. Within 2 hours, using the techniques we've been talking about, this 9-year-old child came up with this drawing here. I'm sorry if it's not very clear. Okay, so that's what we're looking for then, is to be starting off with your left brain drawing and then finishing up with something looking a little bit more like this. So let's get started on that. So let me just tidy up a bit. Right, what I'm going to do is move over here so that you can see me drawing the shoe. So I'm just going to move some things out of the way. So if I sit here, and I think if I tip, let me see, I can just tip this far enough away. Apologies. You can use this time to set up your shoes. You'll notice I've got my shoes on a white background here, a white surface here. That's purely because it lets you see shadow areas against the white. So if you've got a piece of paper or something light that you could put underneath your shoes, and then think about the way that you position your shoes. You know, again, if your logical left brain would probably want a side view going across the way, but override that left brain urge of drawing a shoe from a side and try and find some interesting angles. You can see I've propped one shoe up on another. I've kind of chucked the laces down to one side. You know, you might decide, do I want to, you know, have this tongue in or out or kind of twisted. But the more angles and different shapes you can get, the more you actually have got to work with there. So let's have a look at getting started. You should have your prepared ground, and I'm thinking if I can work maybe here, I just almost need to bring you back a little bit, don't I? There we go. Maybe there, let's try that. It'll hopefully let you see most of what I'm doing. Kind of over my shoulder really. Okay, so I've got my 6B pencil, and I did have my 2B pencil. Here it is. So 6B pencil, 2B pencil. I've got my graphite stick if I need it. Okay, I've got my tissue for rubbing. And if you remember, I said, I told you the other week about chopping up rubbers. So you can see here where I've chopped up a really good quality rubber into lots of little cubes so that I've got extra sharp points. Rather than just having the original 8 on the big rubber, I've got lots and lots of little sharp corners now to use. I've also got my putty rubber here for lifting out areas more gently, and I've got a pencil sharpener in case I need to use that. So the first thing that we're going to do, and the first tip that I can give you, is stop thinking about it as a pair of shoes. Think about it just as an object, and this works for anything you draw. As soon as we label a drawing, then our left brain will interpret that and it will have a sort of stereotypical picture image somewhere stored that it will want to drag up and use. So whenever you're drawing something, try to forget what it is. There's lots of other tips for getting rid of your left brain. You can turn things upside down. You can cover bits up so you can't see what it is, and just that allows you then to think more about the shapes that you're drawing. But if you think, remember at the beginning of the course we talked about the fact that drawing is a bunch of lines and shapes, dark bits and light bits, and that's what we're going to be looking for on the shoes here. Now the first thing, everybody starts their drawing in a different way. The first thing that I would do here is to make sure that I could fit this onto my page. And you sometimes see artists with an extended arm, so you lock your elbow so that your arm is always at the same length every time. And what I was doing was just holding up a pencil to the angle of this shoe here. So going from the back of this shoe to the toe, and I close one eye, so I'm here with one eye closed. That, remember, flattens the image, makes it two-dimensional. If you open your eye, you can see it's really difficult to place your pencil in one place. It kind of moves around. Whereas if you close one eye, you can be much more accurate. Then, without unlocking this elbow here, I'm looking at the angle of that shoe. I'm going to bring my pencil down. So there's the angle. I'm going to bring my pencil down, and I'm just going to mark the angle of, so just down here. So I'm just working out my angles just now. So I'll do that again. Arm out straight, lock it, close one eye. And obviously you have to sit in the same place. If you move, then obviously all these measurements and angles will change. So from there to there, and it's about just over one pencil length for my, so there's the end of my pencil and it's just over. So I'm looking for that line there to be roughly the bottom of this shoe here. Then I'm going to do the middle of this next shoe, and again lock my arm, close one eye, and then this one is actually just a little bit longer than one pencil length, and it's almost a vertical line. Okay, so it starts a little bit higher. There was the end of my last line there, and there was the toe of my other boot, and I've got the right angle. This one, the shoe starts, the shoe is a little bit higher, and it came down just a little bit lower, and roughly that's the angle of the middle of the shoe. Okay, and so this area in the middle, the first thing I can do is take one of my rubbers, and I can just start to rub. This is a space between the shoes now. Okay, so all I've done is check the angle of this shoe, the angle of that shoe. Okay, I've rubbed out a bit just to remind me that's the middle. This allows me now, okay, this allows me to start not with thinking, oh my goodness, I've got to draw this shoe, it's really complicated, I've no idea where to begin. Because remember, we're not calling it a shoe. It's just, they're just things that we're drawing. It could be somebody's head, it could be portraiture, it could be a still life, it could be a bunch of flowers. It's just whatever the object is we're drawing. So now what I'm going to do is look for a shape that I like. Okay, so it's just a bunch of shapes here, and I need to find one that I quite like. And here's a tip for you as well. We are very good at drawing the spaces in between things. Okay, so and the reason is we don't have a left brain symbol for it. If I just ask you to draw me a quick space, don't think about it too much, don't take too long, draw me a quick space, that would be a very difficult task. Whereas we can draw a quick flower, a quick shoe, a quick spider, we can draw all sorts of things quickly, but we don't necessarily have a symbol for a space. So we can draw spaces much more accurately than we can draw actual objects. So what I'm going to do is start with this space in the middle here. And I've just realised that my angle is obviously slightly different because I'm seeing the shoes from lower down. But on the whole, you get the idea. So what I'm seeing now is a shape here. And I'm going to draw that shape. I close one eye. And it basically goes down. There's a little lump like that. Try to be quite detailed. And then the weirdest thing, there's like, oh, I know what it must be. It's the fur. So there's sort of a tufty bit. And then it comes, kind of curves towards me like that. And then it curves round like that. Okay, so before I do, and then the other thing I can see is on the bottom of here, and I'm going to draw this in just while I can see it. They're like little zigzaggy shapes like this. And then they start, and I can refine some of these later, but some of these start to kind of gradually disappear and I can't see them anymore. Then coming down the other side here, it's pretty much a straight line that comes down, and then there's a little bit sticks up, a little bit comes down, and this time I'm going to actually go to this part of the shape here, there, and there. And what I can tell you, okay, so that bit I just had done a bit wrong, so I didn't come far enough over, so that needs to come over a bit more. So you're constantly looking at the relationship of one thing to another. Now, right now, I can feel my left brain getting really uncomfortable. If I show you what I've drawn, then you'll probably understand why. Okay, that looks absolutely nothing like a shoe. So what's happening in my brain is my left brain is telling me, hurry up, draw a shoe, you know what it looks like, what on earth are you doing, this is stupid. And this is this sort of angsty feeling that we get. Just ignore that left brain and carry on with what you're doing, because what I've done there is I've drawn what we call a negative space. That's the space in between things. Okay, so it's like the negative on a photograph. It's the sort of back to front, the inside out bit. So I'm going to use that very fine corner of my rubber, and I'm going to clean all of that middle ground, that middle tone, out of there. And then I'm just going to put back, just by rubbing with my finger. So now what I've drawn is the space in between my shoes. So this is the curve of the shoe coming down at this angle here. This is the space in between my shoes, so this is all going to be part of the shoe over here. But this gives me some wonderful guides of bits that must be happening, okay? So let's have another look then. I've got my space here. Then I'm looking for another shape, and weirdly what I can see is I can see a really tiny dark little triangle just there. Okay, so draw in that really tiny triangle that you see. Then above that tiny dark triangle, I've got another area here. Now what I can see is this part here, so this part here is carrying on here, and these little bits here, these little kind of V shapes, I can still see them a little bit in there, but this bit is really dark, and it gets much darker as you get in towards, and there's also a little bit of light catching just here. So there's a mixture of dark and light. Still doesn't look anything like a shoe. So let's have a look at maybe some bits that might help us get this looking a bit more like a shoe. Now this part here on the shoe, I can see an angle coming up like that. So straight arm, bring it back, and it's that sort of angle. And it's below that, so it's maybe about there. Okay. And then what I'm going to do is draw the shape and to change, and this is where you can always be changing and just checking bits, if you can see what I'm doing there. And this is where you really need to want to draw, because your left brain gets fed up quite easily, and for some of you you'll want to give up about now and go and do something else. Okay, but if you're really serious about learning to draw, then stick with it, it'll get easier. Okay, so what I'm seeing now is I'm just drawing shapes that I see. Okay, and then there's a darker bit here. And then from this bit here, it kind of curves up. And can you see it's a bit like Lego? I'm building it up a bit at a time. And the nice thing about doing it this way is, if you get bored of doing one bit, you can switch and do something else. Like if I look at it, my light source, a bit like when we do the cylinders, my light source is coming mostly from this direction here. Okay, so I've got light coming down onto the shoes from the window on this side here. Okay, so what I'm noticing is that where the light hits, just here, I'm going to rub it's not really bright, but it's a little bit brighter. So if I just using my cube on its side, look, you can see there I'm lifting off the graphite. I'm not making any really clear bits, but I've just, it's a bit lighter there and it's a bit lighter there. Okay, this bit's really light because it's actually the white surface. Then what I could do is maybe take, and again, you know, I would probably pause the video quite soon. I'll just do a tiny bit more. If you want to pause the video and just carry on yourself, I'll do a tiny bit more for you. So basically what you're doing is you're just looking for shapes and lines, and that's coming up to there. And don't be afraid to make adjustments if you want to. Another shape that I can see is here, and again it's that stitching. Okay, and if you want to check any angles, like the angle I've got there of the shoe, so I would come back down and it's sort of that angle. Okay, and then from the top of that bit there, it goes up, and there's actually one bit there that's like a skinny triangle, then I can see little stitching, and then this hairy stuff comes over here, but out of the hairy stuff it kind of comes forward and it's coming down here. And then I could have a look, this are the metal, these bits here, little metal hooks. So I'm not really in the mood to draw those just now in detail, because I want to make sure that I've got everything in the right place for the shoes first. So just be aware if you spend ages on one bit and then realise it's in slightly the wrong place. So you're best to get an overall picture first, but doing this part in detail can help, like the light's catching on those. So I'm just going to lighten those so we can see where it's catching. And can you see it's starting to build up now? Okay, here we've got a bit that kind of comes in and then it goes over. Okay, and I've got another bit from here that's going to come down here, and I'm looking for shapes, so I might make some adjustments there. From here I've got another piece that comes over like that, comes in like this, bit that comes out here, down. And now I'm getting fed up and I want to do it really quickly. So what I'm going to do, instead of doing that, I can see another bit of negative space where I can see through to what it's on. So I'm just going to slow myself down because I can feel my left brain wanting to rush my drawing. So I'm going to switch and do something else just to throw it off. I'm going to just put in that little bit there, which is a little gap between the laces actually. And then I can see that I've got this sort of shape coming. Actually, it goes kind of down and round like that, actually, because you've got all this fur coming. And then over here, so what's the relationship between that line? And then it comes in a bit, goes up quite high, and it's coming like this. So I'm not pretending that I'm going to be the best drawer of a shoe in the world, okay? But it is starting to just come together a little bit now. Okay, and so I'm starting to build it up. Think of it like Lego. Start with the bit that you like, or the bit that's easy to see the shape, and then just build it up one bit at a time. I'm going to stop the video just now. I've just remembered, actually, there's a stage that you can do in between this, just before you do this, if you want, for a warm-up. One of the things that's a massive difference between drawing this kind of work here as opposed to our left brain quick symbol drawings, it's all about learning to see. We tend to look at our paper for 90% of the time and only spend 10% glancing up at what it is that we're trying to draw. And all the while that you're looking up your paper, you're letting your left brain dictate what that shoe looks like. Because I know what these Converse look like, they're mine, and I know they've got fur, and I know what colour they are, and I know about the laces. So I could actually just have a quick look at them, and then I could say, right, there's my Converse shoe, and it's down here, and I'll have a quick look up at it. There's another one, and it comes down here. And, you know, you could do a really quick sketch of it, but it's not got the same level of detail that this one has under here. So one idea to get you really looking, because it should be the other way round, it shouldn't be 90% paper, 10% looking. That should completely switch over. So you should be spending 90% of your time looking at your object that you're drawing, and only 10% of your time glancing back to check where your pencil is on the paper. The more you draw, the better you get at your pencil following your eye as you move it. But that's like anything else, it takes practice. One thing that's quite enjoyable to do, which it's quite a strange thing, is what we call a blind contour drawing or a pure contour drawing. And that is when you don't look at your paper at all. Okay, so it's completely useless in terms of a drawing, but what it does do is it gets you to really analyse what you're drawing there. So for example, if I started to draw, let's see, get another sheet. If I start to draw these shoes without looking so I'm not going to look at this at all. In fact, I'm going to angle my body away so that I'm not tempted to look. And then what I can do is I just literally draw what I see and don't worry at all about what this looks like. It's not about my picture, it's about learning about my object I'm drawing. So I would try one of these before you even start your drawing. So get a scrap of paper, okay, and if you want to write blind contour drawing, just so people know you've done it without looking, and I'm just going to really, and you've got to go really slowly, and I'm seeing like little dark bits here, little dark bits here. I can see little rows stitching. Now you see, I don't know where I'm putting my pencil, so they might be in the right place. It doesn't matter. I can see, now this was the little catch that I drew, and it kind of goes, but what's weird is it's got a sort of shape like that, and it's got a tiny little highlight there, a little light bit there and darker there, okay, and it's turning into a bit of a mess, okay. Then from this one I've got a bit more stitching, and then I've got this next one. Now this next one's got a dark bit there. Oh, it's got a really, really dark bit there. And at the top it kind of comes round and there's like a little half moon shape there and two light bits. That's interesting. And then this comes back round here, but it goes underneath that bit. Okay, then coming down here we've got this nice bit here, and now it's interesting because my left brain wants to do, if you can see this, my left brain wants me to draw the eyelets like this. Okay, but that's not what I can see. That's what my left brain thinks the eyelet should look like. But what I can actually see, if I forget that they are eyelets and just think of them as shapes, what I can see is this. Goes round, and then there's like a kind of almost like a diamond shape there inside it, and then this goes here, and that's got a kind of slightly bit like that, medium there. That comes down over that and comes round. And actually I'm going to stop looking, but it's got slight crisscrosses like that. I can see slightly jiggly lines coming through here. And so what I've done there, without really looking, is you only see part of the eyelet, and then this bit here is obviously the lace. So again, I could just tidy up my drawing, but that would be your lace maybe coming out of your eyelet. And what we find difficult is the fact that we recognise these as eyelets down a shoe, but that doesn't look like anything familiar at all. And in fact, your brain is probably busy right now trying to think, what does it look like? We love to give names to things. We love to know what it is we're drawing. If you can stop doing that and just draw exactly what you see. To start with, it'll end up all a bit wonky, okay? But it doesn't matter because it's going to have so much more character. Look at this texture at the front here. So, I mean, again, I could study this without really looking at it, but it's got lots of little lines like that way, and then it's got these kind of like sort of crosses, or they go, maybe it'd be kind of go like that, and then they've got like little crosses in them. And then at the bottom I can see like this. So that, again, doesn't really look like the toe of my shoe, but when I come to draw it in great detail in here, okay, I already know that it's got these little lines here. These look like crosses inside, little swirly bits. So it gives you a much, much better knowledge. So that's called a blind contour drawing. Yeah, I would pause the video now and get yourself your ground, and I would start to think about, maybe start either with a negative space shape, or what you could do is you might start with one of the eyelets, or this shoe here actually has got a really lovely dark shape in here. So what I could do is from the bottom of that light bit there, I could just go across, and it's quite a wee bit across, and then the shape that I see is kind of like that. And all I'm thinking, I'm not thinking about a shoe, I'm thinking about a shape. And that's the shape that I can see. This time I'm going to use my 6B though, because this whole shape is really, really dark. So I'm just going to darken that area there. Okay, and then you can start to look at what happens in that area, and it's got a bit that comes over here, and this is quite light, this bit here. And you can start to build up. Remember rules that we learned last lesson as well, where one thing touches another. So where this shoe here touches the surface it's sitting on, okay, remember, just darken that line a little. Where this shoe is touching here, the other shoe, let's just darken that line a bit, okay. Where this little catch here is touching the suede of the shoe, it's a little bit darker, okay. And I can see a little dark line coming out there. And I'm looking at the details of what I can see. And this is where it's really good to have the sharp edges of the rubbers, because actually that bit there is really shiny as well. Okay, and this whole area, in fact, if I rub out the light's really catching the back of the shoe here, it's catching the back of the sole down there. I can see a bit of material that's lighter here, and I can see it's really light down here. You remember you can draw with your rubber as well. Here is light, but it gets darker as it goes further away. And I can also see dark shadows, so just underneath here. Why don't I draw the shape? So that's a shadow area there like that. And then I can see a little shape there. And actually within that, it's got a slightly darker line in there as well. And again, if you want to smudge it with your fingers, but you're starting to get, and actually, this is how you get the shapes and folds in something, is just by shading. But it's not that complicated if you just look for areas. Like I can see a sort of V, a sort of V shape of dark there. Okay, so just draw what you see. Next to that V shape there is a light bit here and a light bit here. So we're starting to get some idea of lights and darks, okay, as well. So I'm going to leave that one with you. And if you've got any particular questions, if you want to message me, let's turn around. So if you've got any further questions, just message me and ask away, and if I can put up any photographs that would help you, or if there's anything you want to ask. Just one last thing is, there is a sheet that you can get probably from specialist art shops that when you look through them you can actually see, I don't know whether it works on a camera, but it lets you see the dark and the light areas really clearly. So it's, again, if you close one eye and look through it, it lets you see those bold shapes. So that can be quite helpful. It's a sort of special film that you can look through to help you identify the dark and the light areas, which is good when you're beginning, actually. But as I say, I've not seen them very often in shops. You might be able to get them online. So thank you for joining me. I will be back with you on Friday. I'm not sure I can do a live video yet. I need to up my subscribers on YouTube. So if you can get anyone to subscribe to my channel, even if they don't want to look at it, whatever, that would be helpful. If we can get up to 1,000 viewers, then I'll be able to do a live session from YouTube for you. Otherwise, I'll put up some slides for you on Friday, and we can see how everybody's getting on. So please send me in pictures of what you're doing, work in progress, even just a tiny little bit that you've done, even if you only get as far as this. You can also, if you don't want to draw shoes, you can use this method for anything else. You could take a flower. You could start with your left brain flower drawing, your circle, and I mean, I can do one in seconds, there we go. So you could start with your left brain flower drawing, then you could get yourself some real flowers out of the garden, make a nice display of those, or even just put 1 or 2 sprigs into a vase, and then set yourself up, but don't call them flowers, just look at them as shapes, dark bits, light bits, and different shapes and lines. Then what to do is, once you've thought of it as different shapes and lines, is just draw exactly what you see. But be aware your left brain will be constantly trying to either bring you back to your standard symbolic picture that you have, or it's going to make you really cross and fed up and feel like you're not able to do it. So just try not to label anything, just say, oh look, I can see a sort of a semicircle shape there, so draw the semicircle shape. I can see, and look for the negative space as well, the space in between things. Sometimes it's quite a good challenge actually to try and draw an object entirely just by drawing the spaces in between it and around it first, and it can completely change your drawing. So that's something to think about, and we can talk a little bit more about that later. Okay, thank you.